Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everybody for joining our session. This is the importance of Alimiyya in modern society. So today I will be hosting. My name is Molana Musa. I am from Preston, founder of ilmseekeracademy, and the teacher at Suffa Preston. And here I have my special guest, Molana Farook Kazi, who will do his own introduction. He is the I'll introduce him. He is the head teacher of Suffa and Ansaar Madrasa in Preston. So alhamdulillah, I'm humbled by his presence today, and I'll let him do a little bit of an intro about himself.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As Molana Musa has already mentioned, I am head teacher of Ansaar, Welfare and Education, established in 2001, and also the Suffa Institute, which was established more recently in the year 2020. Very easy to remember because of COVID. Other than that, I have also been running a full daycare nursery for several years, which started in 2006 all the way up to 2017-18. After that, I gave it up because of increasing responsibilities in the madrasa and with the establishment of the Suffa Institute, etc., etc. I am a graduate of the UK from the Markaz Dewsbury Darul Ulum, and ours was the first class to graduate in 1998. So quite a while ago.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Okay, Jazakallah Molana for the introduction. Okay, so to get started on our topic today, the importance of Alimiyya. First, can you explain, to everyone, what is an Alimiyya course?
Alimiyya course, several ways to describe it. The study of Islamic sciences, or you can also say that it's a study of various sciences where the ultimate objective is what we can call the higher sciences, which is the Quran and the Hadith. And in between, there are other ulum, other sciences such as fiqh, principles of fiqh, tajweed, etc. And to reach all of this, whether it's the ultimate objective, the Quran and Hadith, and the other ulum sciences in between, to reach all this, you have to master what we call classical Arabic or Arabic grammar, what I refer to as the Arabic of the Quran and Ahadith. You've got to master that. Without that, you cannot climb up to the top of the ladder to reach the Quran and Ahadith. So that's basically Alimiyya in a nutshell, study of Islamic sciences with the ultimate objective, the Quran and Hadith being the ultimate objective.
Jazakallah for your response, Musa. So the next question is what differentiates an alim and someone who can quickly Google their answers? Because nowadays, a lot of people think, they're educated scholars and they can, quickly get their answers off Google. So why is it important? What's the difference between an alim and someone who can just quickly get their answers off Google, Mufti Google as they call it?
Mufti Google, Sheikh Google, you name it. Number one, when you Google something, first of all, Googling something in itself, even if it's something to do with Sharia, Islam, etc., there's nothing wrong per se. However, if you are trying to find an answer to something which is of a fiqh in nature, etc., then you could Google something, and you could come up with an answer or several answers. Number one, there's no depth. It's just an answer, and whether it's applicable to your personal situation or not, you might be from the Hanafi school of thought, Shafi'i school of thought. You might have Googled something, and the answer that has popped up is, not relevant to your school of thought, etc. So there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems when you simply Google something. But like I said earlier, Googling per se, there's nothing wrong with that. But Googling about Quran, Hadith, something specific, fiqh, etc., then it can be problematic sometimes. And just because you Google and you come up with an answer, it does not qualify you to interpret and appreciate the text directly, what we call the Quran, Hadith, the text directly, the nusus, what we call in Arabic. It doesn't qualify you. It doesn't make you any wiser, any better, any more knowledgeable. You have a little question, you might have found an answer to it, whether it's relevant, irrelevant, whether it answers your question or query or not, that's a separate issue. If you look at the bigger picture, it does not give you any credibility in terms of accessing the nusus, the text directly. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. I think it just provides, further context, especially with people that don't really understand, the difference in terms of different schools of thought,
Yes.
how to interpret things. So yeah, definitely, shed some good light on that. Okay, so next question is, so we've gone from an era where obviously when I was a little bit younger, it was to send someone to a Darul Ulum or Islamic seminary. Was seen as a big thing, was seen as, okay, mashallah, he's going to do an Alimiyyah course. So why do you think that culture's changed? And why do you think, nowadays parents do not really give as much importance to admitting their children in Alimiyyah courses? Why do you think there's a bit of a culture shift?
I do agree that there is a culture shift, and the amount of students going to study Alimiyya, whether it's locally, whether it's in a more traditional Darul Ulum setup, I wholly agree it's decreased. It's decreased by a lot. And it's difficult to quantify the reasons that why are parents not giving importance. It could be material considerations. It could be material considerations. If my son or goes to university, gains a degree, etc., he will have a higher earning potential. Basically. So it could be down to material considerations. It could also be down to something as simple as the thought just doesn't cross their mind that I should at least encourage my son to excel in Alimiyya, and at the same time maybe also gain a degree, etc. What we've got to appreciate is that you could go become an alim, a scholar, undertake Alimiyya, and you can still carry on later on after you've graduated as an alim. You can carry on studying, etc., and you can basically, hopefully, inshallah, gain the best of both worlds. So it is possible. It is possible, but it's something which is not happening frequently, and you have a very tiny amount of students now, especially in towns like Preston, who are undertaking the Alimiyya, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely. Just two follow-up questions.
Yep.
Regarding what you mentioned. The first thing is it possible for someone to successfully complete an Alimiyya course and do a degree at the same time? And if they did, what would you say their biggest challenge is, trying to do that? Is it possible, and is it a good idea?
I don't want to send the wrong signals. I mean, normally what happens is when somebody starts Alimiyya, it's got to be the right age. I think around age 14. I would say anything before that, you're too young, not mature enough. I hear about children as young as 10, 11 starting Alimiyya, and sometimes I think to myself, what's going on? And unfortunately, the institutes themselves are not thinking and considering this as a problem. So if you started at the age of 14, by the time your GCSE is finished, you would have completed the first 2 years of Alimiyya. And what you've got to appreciate is it's the first 2 years that are so important and relevant, where you build a foundation, what we call isti'dad, ability, basically in classical Arabic, in Arabic grammar, to tackle what is to come, i.e. the classical texts, etc. Then most students, they would go to college. Okay, so even with college, if you were doing part-time abridged Alimiyya in the evening, like we have the Suffa Institute, it's possible. Okay, so now you've finished 4 years, you've completed 4 years. Maybe I know some students after 4 years, they take a gap year out sometimes. Okay, so they can focus on their Alimiyya, 5th year. Okay, so you've still got 2 years of Alimiyya left. You've done 4 years, you've got a further 2 years left. Maybe you could take a gap year and complete 1 year of your degree. So there's a balance. So when you finish, you've also finished 1 year of university as well. I feel that's manageable. I feel that's manageable. And I think your second question was, what
What's
do
the
they need?
biggest challenge? What's the biggest challenge?
Biggest challenge, wallahi, is time management. They need to be highly focused and they need to manage their time so effectively that basically they get the best of both. What we don't want is, and what we see is, it's either you give priority to only one and not the other. Priority should be given to both, and that can only happen if you are disciplined, if you have a high level of time management, basically. Because what you've got to appreciate is, in Alimiyya, there's an element of preparation, what we call mutala'a, where you read up, you research, you come prepared. And that requires time. And that can range from anything from a bare minimum of 1 hour, all the way up to 2-3 hours. So depending on the depth you want to go into, depending on what you want to achieve. I'll give you an example. As a guideline, we say in the first year of Alimiyya, we say that your son, your daughter, they must devote 1 full hour at home every single day, and 3-4 hours on the weekend, basically. So you can just appreciate from there that it's not just about attending classes. Oh no, there's much more than that. There's much more than that. I hope that answers the question.
Well, definitely, there's a lot of time and dedication that's needed, and a clear focus needed on priorities. Definitely.
Yes.
Okay, so my next question is, do you feel there's a training problem for new graduates of institutes going on to serve the community? Because sometimes, there is a little bit of criticism that young alims sometimes tend to gain, especially when, they're quite young. Let's just say they're 19, 20, 21 years old, and now, they've come out of this bubble and now they're serving the bigger, wider community. So do you feel there's a training problem, for these new graduates?
Firstly, definitely, if we look now and compare it to 15 years ago, 20 years ago, things have improved. I will definitely say that. Things have improved. However, I will wholly say that more still needs to be done. A lot more still needs to be done. And I think what we've got to appreciate here is that when you say that this person's an alim, okay, this person's a scholar, he's not just the imam of a masjid. Let's say he eventually becomes the imam of a community, of a masjid. He's actually a leader of the community. And he needs to be able to tackle the highly diverse issues he is going to face and which the community faces. And for that, beyond the Islamic learning, beyond the Quran, Hadith, beyond the classical texts, etc., there definitely is a need for other training. I mean, I will wholeheartedly say that. And I'll go a step further. I'll also say that many who come out, they lack social skills. Social skills is being able to interact with your community, with your people, with your congregation. Even if you're not an imam, people will still approach you, basically, when they find out you're a scholar, questions, this, that, the other. So I think having the appropriate social skills is also very important. And this should also be tackled by the institute, by the Darul Ulum, etc. So it's basically very holistic. A person should come out as a complete package, basically, not just having studied Alimiyya, the nusus, the text, the Quran, Hadith, and a person could be well versed in that. However, when it comes to other aspects of tackling community issues, etc., you're not confident, you feel unable to tackle them, or you might even sadly feel that it's not relevant, it's not your remit, basically, which I feel is even far worse.
So what in that scenario, what advice would you give to new graduates in terms of where do they go for training? Where do they go for extra support? How do they get there? If they don't have that experience, what do they do?
I think firstly, if the Darul Ulums and the institutes themselves, if they undertook small baby steps, I think it would really empower Alimiyya students, and it will be a good starting point. It would get them ready, what we call, for the real world, basically. So things like, I'll give you some examples. teacher training. Okay, many graduates will go out and teach, whether it's in a maktab, whether it's in a more higher education setting. They're going to go out and they're going to teach. Even doing a few modules on teacher training, at least it will signpost that student, that graduate, that there is something called teacher training, and this is something which I need to undertake and pursue after I complete my Alimiyya. Another example is roles and responsibilities of an imam. Traditionally everybody thinks an imam just comes into the masjid, leads the prayers and goes home. No. There's far more to that. And I think this is where the masajid themselves need to appreciate that the imam's role is diverse. Okay, so the institute, the Darul Ulum, could have a workshop on this. They could call, there's also, I'm just digressing a little bit. People might think there's a cost factor involved. There isn't. We can easily tap into graduates of our own institute and invite them to conduct little workshops, little seminars, give a PowerPoint presentation. If we had, over the course of one academic year, 20 people coming in, okay, that's 20 items covered, basically. 20, and that's a lot. So this could be done, gradually over the Alimiyya, maybe starting from year 3, year 4, year 5, years, slowly building up. So it's not just left till the last year. There's also things like current affairs media training. I think it might not be within the capacity of many Darul Ulums, this, but I think it's important, very important, because whenever something happens in the community, the first person the media looks for is community leaders, imams, etc. So, some sort of media training, current affairs, and there's a lot of things out there which are now free, which people will come out and deliver to you free of charge, so we can tap into that as well. So these are just a few things. I've even jotted down national and international issues of relevance. We've got so many, if you look at the news nowadays, 40% of the news is dedicated to Muslim issues and the Muslim world. So again, students need to appreciate how to read the news, etc., and read through the news, what's bias, what's prejudice, what different news organizations out there, what's the media basically world like, etc. So when graduates come out, if they've covered these things, inshallah, I feel they'll have a good head start to tackling the real issues that they will face out there. Otherwise, you could graduate and you have to literally start from zero. I'll give you my own example. We did none of this in our Darul Ulum. I come from a very traditional Darul Ulum where these things were never covered. So you yourself have to go out there and basically trial and error, you'll make mistakes, etc. And you have to pick yourself up and continue, and you build yourself up. But that could take 3, 4, 5 years. And if you had this training from before, if you had these workshops from before, you have a head start and you could excel even further and faster, inshallah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's just giving yourself the necessary tools to start the role. And then obviously no one's saying that you're going to become a perfect imam when you begin with.
No.
And I think one thing that you mentioned as well back in Madrasa in one of the workshops was having a mentor as well, having an experienced imam on the side to go to for advice, for any issues. So yeah, Jazakallah, Molana, for the little bit of insight that you've provided.
No problem.
Okay, so would you? There's a again there's a bit of a public perception, you could say, that sometimes graduates aren't really taken that seriously by the public because they just think that this individual only went to a Darul Ulum like it's nothing.
Yep.
And sometimes there's also a little bit of a misconception from people, and they tend to say that if that graduate was also a working professional, then they'd have more respect given to them. So what would you say to those people? Is that a myth? Is there any truth to that? What would you say?
I think first of all, I think we should appreciate that an imam is a working professional, and that's how he should be perceived. He is a working professional. His role is professional. I think it's just because of probably a bit of cultural baggage that we don't perceive the role as professional. And I would say that there's many ulama out there who might not be a working, professional in the context we're talking, but they're taken very seriously. So I think the reason they're taken seriously is because of trust and integrity. So I feel trust and integrity is far more important when it comes to the community and members of the public taking someone, what we say, seriously. Basically, yes, being a professional in another field, I feel that does have its advantages. There's no doubt about that. But per se, I feel even if someone was not active in another field on a professional level, on a higher level, I feel it's more down to trust, integrity, etc., where people will look at a person and say, yes, I can trust this person. He's a genuine person. If I go to him with an issue, he's going to give me honest advice. Basically, he's not going to say something which I want to hear or the community just wants to hear. He's going to give me impartial advice, etc. And I think that trust and integrity, it takes a long time to build. It does take a long time to build, basically. And it also takes seconds literally to lose it as well.
Yeah, definitely. Jazakallah. And actually, probably my final question of this workshop might be a little bit of a difficult question because it's kind of an open-ended question. Is, in the field of imamate, there's a lot of difficulties, especially when it comes to imamate pay, right? There's a lot of people that come out and they're just scraping, the bottom of the barrel. They're just scraping minimum wage, and it's a sad state to see, because you're not just talking about someone who's there to lead salah. You're talking about a community leader. Now, a community leader and someone you lead you through crisis. We're talking in other areas, at least minimum 35, 45, even up to 50 grand. And in some roles, I personally find it to be unacceptable. Sometimes they're offering 18 grand or before that, or even just under that. So what do you think, what needs to change in the landscape, and what steps do you think we could take to sort of get there?
A good question, a relevant question, and like you said, a challenging question.
Yeah.
I think first of all is appreciating the role of the imam. I think it all starts from there. So if masajid, the people who run the masajid, etc., the community, if you appreciate that my imam is there not just for the 5 prayers and Jumu'ah and nikah and funerals, etc., rather he's there as a spiritual guide, as a mentor, as a counselor, etc., and also steps are taken to give the imam the space to do these things, then I feel the community themselves will appreciate that he needs to be remunerated, to a better standard. Maybe have a starting package where you could start off with a modest figure. North south, there's a big difference. The cost of living in the south, London, etc., is far higher. Okay, so maybe the community could come up with a figure. I don't know what a decent starting figure is, but then, like I said earlier, we need to appreciate that this is the role of the imam. This is the role of the imam, and the imam needs to be doing this, and we're remunerating the imam for something like 35, 40 hours a week. The other thing I will say, because I also lead some prayers at the Suffa Institute, and people sometimes think he's only leading salah. Well, my answer to these people is, why don't you lead salah, okay, for 3 days? Just 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, okay? So if you have Fajr Salah to lead, at the moment, Fajr Salah is at 5:15 a.m. If you have Fajr Salah to lead, and if you're a concerned imam, you would be up at least an hour before. You have to wake up, relieve yourself, do wudu, have a glass of water or something, because your throat might be playing up a little after, waking up, etc. And whatever you're going to recite in Fajr Salah is one of the most challenging salah in terms of qira'ah. You need to go over it in your mind 2-3 times, or even maybe look at the Quran as well. So my point is, Fajr Salah is at 5:15, but you've been awake and preparing 1 hour prior, or at least 45 minutes prior. Okay, so Fajr Salah itself is like 1 hour, 15, 20 minutes for this person, maybe 1.5 hours. Then you've got to travel to the masjid. All depends how far you live. Okay, so I think people need to appreciate that it's not just he's coming and leading salah and going, and he's got to read salah anyway. No, when you don't have to lead Salah, Molana Musa, yeah, you can come to the masjid 2 minutes prior to Jama'ah. Am I right? When you've got to lead Salah, you've got to be mentally prepared. You've got to be there on time. Make sure you've got wudu, etc. Yeah, it's a completely different ball game. And I'll give you a small example, which I give to my friends, that let's say you had a slight urge to pass, to relieve yourself, just a slight urge. Nothing, you're not desperate. You can join the Imam easily and perform your Salah, and you will not be inconvenienced one bit. If you're the Imam and you have a slight urge to relieve yourself, you can't do that. You've got to make sure you relieve yourself properly, and you do wudu, and you stand on the musalla, because you've got to read qira'ah, especially in Fajr, in Maghrib, in Isha, and also the community is depending on you, basically. So you can't do that. So my point is that don't belittle the role of the Imam. That's number one. Number two, appreciate that he's there for a wider and bigger purpose. Give him the space to do that, and then remunerate him accordingly. And I think build it up slowly, that you could have a starting remuneration after year 2, year 3, it can increase basically. And I think the bigger masajid, they can easily afford this and manage this. And, you know, in certain places where the cost of accommodation is very high, the masjid should take steps to accommodate the imam, you know, in a house, etc., and sort out the rent as well. It all depends on what you want from your imam. If you have a good imam, you want to retain him, you want to keep him, you don't want him to go somewhere else, basically. So I think it's all about appreciating the role of the imam as a starting point, and then hopefully remunerating him appropriately because of the appreciation of his role.
Jazakallah khair. We've got a question in the chat, but before I get to that question, I've just got one more question to you. What advice would you give, especially to new imams, when dealing with you know, committees in masajid? How do you deal with, you know, confrontation? How do you deal with
Difficult people,
egos? You know, what does one need to do to try and overcome that and not engage too much in those, you know, in those conversations?
Yeah, I think we just mentioned this a little earlier. You need to have a good mentor. Let's say I'm a new graduate. I've just literally come out of Darul Ulum and I've been put on the deep end, i.e., I'm an imam of a big masjid. Now, you're just fresh out of Darul Ulum, you've just graduated, you don't even know the community you're going into, okay? So it's very good and not very good, very important to have a mentor, you know, someone who knows you, someone who lives locally, someone who's mature and who will give you impartial advice. So whenever you're faced with a scenario, rather than trying to deal with it yourself on the spot, you should not deal with it on the spot, heat of the moment. Rather, refer to your mentor, discuss it with him, and even after receiving his advice, ponder, reflect before you take any action. I feel if you know, young graduate imam did this, a new imam did this, wallahi, they'll go a long way. They will go a long way, basically. I think this is really important.
That's fine. Jazakallah khair for shedding a bit of light on that question. I know it's a bit of a difficult question.
It is.
Yeah. So yeah, Jazakallah. Okay, we just got one question, Musab, in the chat. Please also explain importance of female scholars. So how do female scholars, how can they affect, you know, positively impact the wider society? What role do they have as scholars in their communities?
I think just as it is important to have male scholars, we need to have female scholars as well. So when I say female scholars, just as I said for the males, we want good, competent female scholars. And I feel if you compare the Alimiyya of male, female, I feel that maybe the males is more stronger in the sense of provision. For the females, I think sometimes it's not as well-resourced as the males. So this is something definitely that needs addressing. And number two is, even our female graduates, when they graduate from Darul Ulum, from Alimiyya, etc., there's a lot of things they can go into as well. For example, they could go into counseling, they could also go into community work, etc., which benefits the community. It's not that, okay, I've graduated, I'll just teach maybe in the evening and that's it. That's the end of story. No. But on that point, I want to also mention teaching in the evening is also very important. It's also very important because I always say, this is how I explain the maktab, that 99.99% of our children are not going to go to Darul Ulum. They're not going to undertake Alimiyya. They are going to go to the maktab and they are going to receive their Islamic education and tarbiyah from there. So you can see the importance of the maktab. So I feel that definitely we need female scholars. We need competent female scholars. And again, for them as well, there are a variety of roles they can go into. Something just I came to my mind. You might have heard of the White Thread Institute, London, Mufti Abdul Rahman Manghera. I think for the last 2-3 years, they've been holding an event called Postgraduate Alimiyya Careers, like a careers fair, you could call it. So there are things out there, basically, which will guide new graduates to a potential role, a position, etc., or whether they need to upskill a little bit by going to by undertaking some courses, and then they can go into that particular field. So there are things out there, not to a very high level and not that widespread, but there are things out there. And it's all about trying to find out what's out there and what support you can get to further yourself and develop yourself.
Yeah, that's fine. Jazakallah myself. Just another question that's just come in. In what other ways is Alimiyya important or beneficial for community or personal lives, which can motivate people to study it?
Okay, so more for personal gain, that type of thing. Is that the question?
Yeah, as in apart from maybe from the community perspective, what can a female kind of scholar gain, from a personal perspective? How can it impact their life?
I think by studying Alimiyya, undertaking Alimiyya, I think the first beneficiary should be yourself, spiritually, in terms of your iman, in terms of appreciating the Quran, ahadith, etc. I feel the first. I hope I've got the gist of the question correct. Have I?
I'll repeat the question again. So, in what other ways is Alimiyya important or beneficial for community or personal lives, which can motivate people to study it?
Okay. I mean, to motivate someone to study Alimiyya in terms of benefiting the community, I think it all depends on the values of parents, etc. Remember, no 13, 14, very few 13, 14-year-olds are going to say, I want to study Alimiyya, okay, themselves, very few. So it all depends on the parents, number one. It all depends on the wider community, where it's like you teach in a maktab, I also teach in a maktab as well. We should mention it to our pupils when they are maybe 10, 11, okay, that consider undertaking Alimiyya. You will be benefiting yourself, you will be benefiting the community, and you will, inshallah, have a greater appreciation of your deen, of the Quran, ahadith. So I think there's a bit of community effort required, maybe effort in terms of the parents as well. As otherwise, no child is going to basically say at the age of 13, 14, tender ages, where they say, I want to study Alimiyya. What I have seen, which you will have seen as well, a lot of mature students want to undertake Alimiyya when they're 18, 19, 20, sometimes even 21, 22. And usually at that age, it's very difficult to juggle, your domestic priorities. You might be working, etc. And then you want to undertake Alimiyya.
Yeah, hopefully, inshallah, that's answered the question. There's just another question. What are the biggest challenges the youth are facing? And what can a graduate do and Imams do to try and tackle this?
Oh, youths are facing a lot of challenges. Basically, whether it's in terms of substance abuse, whether it's in terms of social media, whether it's in terms of other sins, vices, etc. There's a whole load of issues out there. And it all comes back to what I said earlier, that in the Darul Ulums, if we had certain workshops, certain training events that empowers the alim, empowers the student for future engagement, it will give them a real head start. Sometimes people might come with you with a problem, and you might not even have heard of that problem, okay? So it really throws you back. However, if you've had some training, and the other thing is you have a mentor, you can ask and navigate your way and come to some sort of solution for that person by giving them suitable responses, suitable answers, or at the least, you could signpost them that, look, why don't you go to this person? They're an expert in this field. I can't really help you with this, but at least I can signpost you. So there are many challenges the youths are facing. There's no doubt about that. And the ulama should be ready, graduates should be ready to help and support them. And if there's more complex issues, try to signpost them to more suitable individuals.
Just another question that's just come in. We'll have the last one or two questions and then we'll draw the meeting to a close, inshallah. Don't want to keep people for too long. Is there any advice for an alima who struggles to remember a lot of the things that they had learned? What advice would you give them?
Good question. Good question. I think what it is, you might forget certain things, which is natural. Happens to me, happens to everyone. Okay. But if you've got a good grounding in Alimiyya, good foundation, then you can pick up literally at any time. That's first point I want to make. Second is, if you're not in the teaching field, okay, so you're not teaching Islamic sciences, whether it's at a lower level, starting level, foundational level, or higher level, at the very least, what you should be doing every day is taking out 15, 20 minutes of quality time and reading something. Especially, it's got to be in Arabic. It's got to be preferably in Arabic. So you read something. So it could be a hadith book. It could be, so maybe every 2 weeks you could change. So 2 weeks, every day, for 20 minutes, you look at a hadith book. After 2 weeks, you change to something like fiqh. Then you could go to a tafsir. So what you're doing is every couple of weeks, you are refreshing your knowledge. You are reading up on various ahadith, Quran verses, etc. That's what I would strongly suggest. And even us who are in the field of teaching, I think this applies to us as well, that we should have a book on the side, which might not be, which should ideally not be connected to what we are already teaching. And we read that just to refresh our knowledge. I think it's very important. So that's what I would advise, that take out 15, 20 minutes of quality time. That's the bare minimum. Ideally, half an hour, 40 minutes is even better. But at the very least, take out 20 minutes, have a fixed time every day where you sit down and you are reading, and reflecting and absorbing what you're reading, basically.
There's actually a comment in the chat section. I think this is the last one we're going to take.
Go on.
There's a comment saying, the problem is that graduates study for years and still cannot speak the language.
Good question.
An issue. It is definitely an issue. What can we?
Okay. Let me answer that and address that. First of all, what we've got to appreciate is that when you learn classical Arabic in an Alimiyya setup, okay, you are learning the Arabic of the Quran and Ahadith, and that should be your sole objective. So you should have, after 12 months, 18 months, you should have good ability, good isti'dad to tackle literally any Arabic text, number one. Number two, speaking is a completely different ballgame. That's what people need to appreciate. That, for example, we just had some brothers from Jordan in our local masjid who were in Jama'ah. When they would speak to me, they would speak in what we call the Fusha Arabic, the Fasih, the eloquent Arabic, almost the Arabic of the Quran Hadith. When they would speak amongst themselves, they would speak in basically their own local dialect, which for us to understand is literally impossible sometimes. Okay, so speaking is a different ballgame. If somebody wants to become competent in speaking Arabic, I would suggest you go to the Middle East for 6 months, try to find something there to do, and you engage with the local people, and wallahi, in 6 months, you will be able to speak because you've already got the foundation. You've already got the foundation of classical Arabic, or you should have that strong foundation. For you to pick up the lingo, inshallah, it's very easy. But what you must not expect is that every graduate who comes out is able to converse in Arabic freely, easily. That's not going to happen. I think that's a very unrealistic expectation because speaking is a completely different ballgame in Arabic. Hope that answers the question, Molana Musa.
Yeah, no, definitely does. I think we'll draw the meeting to a close then, Molana.
No problem.
Do you have any last words? Anything else that you'd like to mention that you
anybody who's listening to this and who will listen to this, if you're studying Alimiyya, do it properly. give it the time it deserves. And if you are about to set out and you're in your first year, make sure you build your foundation to a strong level, high level. That's my parting words of advice. Jazakallah.
That's fine, Jazakallah. And also on the poster, you may have seen, if you do have any further questions for Molana, as he has a lot of years of experience within the field, then please do drop us an email at admin@ilmseeker.com, ilmseekeracademy.com. My apologies, it's on the poster. So if you have any further questions, then I will definitely pass it on to Molana and come back to you, inshallah. So again, Jazakallah khair, Molana, for taking the time out.
Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.
And, see you next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.